Hello again, friends. This is Marilyn from Tarot Clarity, and it occurred to me yesterday when I did my self-introductory video that I said I was filming from my tarot parlor. It occurred to me that I never really showed you my tarot parlor, and so I wanted to give you a bit of a brief glance into my sacred space. When I originally built the room, I had thought that it should be a sacred circle, but as I did it by myself and I have limitations, I decided to be happy with a square, more or less square shaped room, which I consecrated and marked. In this case, I have 5 corners, each corner with, protective stones. There's one over there, and then there's one in the back there. I did my little stuff that I do to make it a sacred area. I have a lot of decks, and I figured I'd show you how I store them also. Isn't this lovely? This was one of my grandmother's end lamps from her bureau, and I dated them to about 80 to 100 years old. So I'm very thrilled to have them. But at any rate, back in the old days when I had 3 children and I was starting to amass a bunch of tarot decks, my parents gave me an armoire, which was intended originally for jewelry. But I ended up using it for my tarot. And now this particular cabinet doesn't hold tarot, at least not on the top. It holds like Lenormand decks and Gypsy Fortune Telling decks and Sibylla decks. I have a Miss Cleo deck too. I have 2 Miss Cleo decks as a novelty. And then the bottom of this holds my oldest decks. Now, back in the day, I got the idea that when you got a tarot deck, you had to take it out of the box and you had to put it in a special pouch, and most of them I made, some of them I bought, some of them were gifted to me. So generally my oldest decks are in pouches, and I unfortunately discarded the packaging they came in, which kind of makes me sad because as a collector, I realize the value of, keeping the packaging, especially for the out-of-print decks. But you live and you learn, right? In recent years, I've amassed, considerably more decks, and this particular cabinet holds my much larger decks that have, a lot of packaging. So, but I am running out of storage space, as we speak. I keep most of my decks in this gorgeous piece of koa wood. I'm going to tilt the camera for a second. Isn't that beautiful? My husband gave it to me. It was a humidor for his cigars. And now I've just repurposed it for myself. There's a couple decks up top because I told you I don't have any more. I'm running out of space. I'm tilting the camera because I'm too short. I just have this filled with tarot decks too. And sometimes I make an effort to keep similar decks together, like the Yves Renaud decks. I keep them grouped together, and the Flournoy decks, or if they're like 2 Noblet decks or something. But, I have 2 Robert Place decks in this drawer and 2, decks from Baba Studios. So here I have 2 circus theme decks. But more, only if I have room. Most of the time I just end up putting decks where I can find a spot. Here are some of my books, not all of them, but some of them. Just because a book is on the shelf doesn't mean it's a good book. I try to read everything, I try to remain current, and everything that comes out, I try to get my hands on it just to, see what, the new trends are, or the new way of thinking is. And my space is just filled with things I love, beautiful objects, some things that are just special to me personally. This cabinet is just filled with fun things to serve my purpose. Sometimes I do special little, little ceremonies for people using tarot. I always use tarot. And this, table represents contains all my tools, You'll notice a telephone on this table, and the telephone's not here for me to make phone calls and chat with my friends. It's occasionally I will do phone readings. I don't prefer to do them. I hate talking on the telephone, but sometimes people really want to talk to me on the phone. And so I will occasionally do telephone readings, but not generally because I really don't like them. And this is the space where I just did my morning read for Instagram. So that's all set up, and I already did it, but it's still there. On top of this cabinet is kind of an homage to the special women in my life, predominantly my mother, who I lost in recent months. There's her photograph. At the end, as she was dying, she had asked me that every time I saw a butterfly or a hummingbird, to imagine that it was her. And so it's kind of special. I keep butterflies in this room with me, and little hummingbirds things. This is a picture of her mother, and this cup is representative of my father's grandmother. Now, obviously, this is a new cup. I bought it at a trendy bookstore, but it's a tea leaf reading cup, and my great-grandmother, my father's mother, read tea leaves. So I thought it would be a nice gesture to include that in here. We have the goddess, the earth goddess, and this object is a butterfly, but my daughter gave it to me. And this tiara is an homage to my daughter also. So the most significant women in my life were my mother, and now, of course, my daughter. And so that's that. I think I've covered everything. Books that I like to have at hand. There's Emerson. This vessel, when I do, giveaways, I'll put names in there, people who entered. And so this space is entirely for tarot. Some music, I like to put on music sometimes. I have the luxury, as now that I'm older and the children are out of the house, I have the luxury of being able to devote a room to my practice. And so this is it. I hope that you like my space, my sacred space, and that it helps flesh out who I am and get a better idea of me and tarot. So, bye.